This is the story of Officer Daniel Hayes, a man who thought he had seen everything, until one cold Tuesday morning. A routine call sent him to an abandoned lot on the edge of town, and what he found there changed him forever. Stay with me, because this story is going to hit you somewhere deep. It was 6:47 in the morning when the call came in. A neighbor had reported a strange noise coming from the empty lot on Callaway Street. It was the kind of lot nobody paid attention to: overgrown grass, broken glass, an old chain-link fence that had been rusting for years. People walked past it every day without looking twice. Daniel took the call. It was supposed to be nothing. A stray dog, maybe. Some homeless guy sleeping it off. He had responded to calls like this 100 times. He grabbed his coffee, got in the cruiser, and drove over. When he pulled up, everything looked normal. The lot was quiet. The morning fog was still sitting low on the ground. He stepped out of the car, adjusted his belt, and walked toward the fence. He called out. No answer. He pushed open the broken gate and stepped inside. That's when he saw her. She was tucked behind a large piece of broken concrete, curled up so tight she almost looked like a pile of old clothes. A little girl, maybe 7 years old. Her hair was matted and dirty. Her lips were cracked. Her arms were wrapped around her own body like she was trying to hold herself together. She was alive, barely. Daniel stopped walking. For a second, he just stood there, because in that moment, his brain could not process what his eyes were seeing. He took one step forward, then another. He got down on one knee right there in the dirt and the broken glass. And he said, very softly, Hey, I'm right here. I'm not going to hurt you. She didn't move. He looked closer, and that's when he saw it. That's when his chest caved in. Around her tiny wrist was a piece of rope. Not tied to anything now. It had been cut or worn through. But the marks it had left on her skin told a story that made Daniel's stomach turn. Red, raw, deep marks. The kind that come from being tied up for a long time. Not hours. Days. He looked at her face. Her cheeks were sunken. Her eyes, when she finally opened them and looked up at him, were dull, like the light in them had been slowly going out for a while. She hadn't eaten. That was obvious. But it was more than hunger. This child had been kept somewhere, restrained, and then left. Abandoned in an Daniel Hayes, a man who had never cried on the job. Not once, not in 22 years. Sat down right there on the ground next to her and broke down. Not a quiet tear. He broke. His shoulders shook. He put one hand over his mouth. He took deep breaths that didn't work. His partner, Officer Mike Callahan, who had just walked through the gate behind him, stopped dead when he saw Daniel on the ground. Mike had never seen that before. Nobody had. He immediately called for an ambulance and stood back, because even he understood this wasn't a moment to interrupt. Daniel stayed right next to that little girl, talking to her in the softest voice he could manage, telling her she was safe, telling her it was over, telling her someone was coming. She looked at him for a long time without saying anything. Then she said 4 words. Are you my angel? Daniel couldn't answer. He just took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. And he did not leave her side. The paramedics arrived in 8 minutes. They said she was severely malnourished and dehydrated. Her body temperature was dangerously low. She had multiple bruises on her arms and back. She had been outside in that lot for at least 2 days, possibly more. They estimated she had not had a real meal in close to a week. Her name, they would later find out, was Lily. Lily Carson, 7 years old. She had no ID, no phone, no bag, nothing except the clothes on her back and those marks on her wrist. The investigation that followed was one of the most painful cases the department had worked in years. Lily had been living with a man who claimed to be her uncle, a man named Roy. Her parents had died in a car accident. When she was 4, Roy had taken her in, or so everyone thought. What the investigators found when they searched that house made every officer in the room go silent. Lily had been living in a back room with no windows. She was given food only when Roy decided she deserved it, which wasn't often. There were dried rope marks on the bedpost that matched the ones on her wrist. Neighbors had heard crying before, but nobody had ever called it in. Nobody wanted to get involved. Roy had left town 2 days before Daniel found her. He had simply packed a bag and gone. Left a 7-year-old child alone, tied up, with nothing. Just abandoned her. He was arrested 3 states away 4 days later. Meanwhile, Lily was in the hospital. The doctors said she would recover physically. Her body was young and resilient. With proper nutrition and care, she would be okay. But trauma doesn't heal the same way a broken bone does. The hospital psychologist spent hours with her. She barely spoke at first. She didn't trust easily. She had learned, very early, that the adults in her life were not safe. Except for one. Every single day that Lily was in that hospital, Daniel Hayes came to visit her. He wasn't assigned to do it. Nobody told him to. He just showed up. Sometimes in uniform, sometimes not. He brought her small things, a stuffed rabbit, a juice box, a coloring book. He would sit next to her bed and talk about nothing important. The weather, his dog back home, a funny thing that happened at the precinct. He never pushed her to talk about what happened. He just made sure she knew he was there. After about a week, she started talking back. Small things at first, then more. She told him her favorite color was yellow. She told him she used to like school before everything changed. She told him she had a stuffed bear once, before Roy took it away from her. Daniel went home that night and bought her the biggest stuffed bear he could find. The nurses said that was the first time they had seen Lily smile. Daniel's wife, Karen, noticed the change in him at home. He was quieter, more thoughtful. He would sit at the dinner table and just stare at his food sometimes. She asked him about it one night, and he told her everything. Karen cried too. That same week, they had a conversation that would change their lives completely. They had talked about fostering before, years ago, briefly, and then life got busy and it never went anywhere. But now, with Lily in that hospital bed and no family to go home to, the conversation came back. They contacted the caseworker. They asked about the process. They filled out the paperwork. It wasn't fast. Nothing in the system is ever fast. There were home visits, background checks, interviews. There were weeks of waiting. Daniel visited Lily every day through all of it. One afternoon, during one of his visits, Lily looked at him very seriously and asked, "Are you going to disappear like everyone else?" Daniel looked right back at her and said, "No, I'm not going anywhere." He meant it. 5 months after Daniel found Lily in that lot, she moved into his home. It wasn't easy. Nobody pretends it was. Lily had nightmares. She had days where she would shut down completely. She had moments of real anger that surprised everyone, including herself. Trauma doesn't go away just because you're finally somewhere safe. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes someone willing to show up, even on the hard days. Daniel and Karen showed up every single day. Karen left a nightlight on in Lily's room because she was afraid of the dark. Daniel learned to knock before entering any room she was in. They gave her choices about everything: what to eat, what to wear, when to go to bed. Because one of the cruelest things that had been taken from her was the feeling of having any control over her own life. Slowly, things shifted. Lily started eating more. She started sleeping through the night. She started laughing at the dinner table. She started asking if she could help Karen in the kitchen. She joined a soccer team at school and turned out to be surprisingly fast. One evening, about 8 months in, she came up to Daniel while he was watching TV and just climbed up next to him on the couch and put her head on his arm. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He just sat there. But later that night, he told Karen it was one of the best moments of his life. The adoption was finalized on a sunny Thursday in March. The courtroom was small. The judge was an older woman with reading glasses, who had clearly seen a lot of these proceedings. But even she smiled when Lily walked in holding Daniel's hand. There was no big speech, no dramatic moment, just paperwork, a signature, and a little girl who finally, officially, had a family. Lily looked up at Daniel after the judge said it was done and said, "So now your last name is my last name?" He said, "That's right." She thought about it for a second. Then she nodded, very seriously, like she had just approved an important business decision. "Okay," she said. "I like it." Everyone in that room laughed, including Daniel. And if there were tears too, there were definitely tears. Nobody mentioned it. Daniel Hayes still works on the force. He still takes routine calls. He still drives past abandoned lots and quiet streets. But he is not the same man who pulled up to Callaway Street that cold Tuesday morning with a coffee in his hand and no expectation of anything real. He says now that he thought he understood what his job meant: protect and serve, keep people safe, go home, repeat. He thought he knew the weight of it. He didn't. Not until a 7-year-old girl with rope marks on her wrist looked up at him from the dirt and asked if he was an angel. He wasn't an angel. He was just a man who showed up, who got down in the dirt, who didn't walk away. Sometimes that's all it takes to save a life. Lily Carson Hayes is 9 years old now. She is in 3rd grade. She plays soccer on Saturdays and makes her dad carry her trophy every time her team wins. She still has hard days. She probably always will. But she also has a yellow bedroom, a giant stuffed bear, and a father who shows up every single day without fail. Not because it's his job, because she's his kid.